Praise be Jesus Christ. I thought we could do something fun today. I have a pile of Bibles in front of me. Most of you are going to think this is really dorky, but I know there's some of you who love doing this as well. So check this out. I was going through Searching for and Maintaining Peace, and this is the book of the month, by the way, if you're part of my school of reading. Father Jacques Philippe opens with a beautiful verse. May the peace of Christ reign in your hearts. Colossians 3:15. When I first read this, I thought to myself, that's a beautiful verse, but I'm not familiar with that translation. So thus begins my fun. I do this type of thing on a regular basis. Again, some of you are going to think this is dorky, but I go through a bunch of translations to find where does that come from? What are other translations? If I'm going to learn this verse by heart, what's the best translation? So I usually begin with the New American Bible, which is my preaching translation, simply because it's kind of the most accessible. It's the easiest translation to preach from to me. I find about 60% of the verses are kind of best in the New American Bible. So what does the New American Bible have for Colossians 3:15? And let the peace of Christ control your hearts. So Jacques Philippe says, reign in your hearts. New American Bible says, control your hearts, which isn't a nice translation. I certainly wouldn't memorize that one. Then I go to the RSV, which to me has maybe 30% best translations. There's some things translated in the RSV that's just better than any other translation. The RSV has, and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, which isn't really, a translation I would want to memorize, although it's probably the most accurate translation, it seems. Then I'll take a look at, for example, the New Jerusalem Bible, which translates some things well. And may the peace of Christ reign in your hearts. Bingo, there it is. Father Jacques Philippe was translating the New Jerusalem Bible. Sometimes I'll take a glance at how the Breviary translates it. The Breviary has a number of different translations, but I think for the readings, it's from an old version of the New American Bible. Christ's peace must reign in your hearts. So there we have the word reign again. Then I'll take a look at the Douay-Rheims translation. The Douay-Rheims is the hardest translation to read. It's really hard to preach from, but it has great value. And many people, it is their favorite translation. For some people, it's their only translation. Check out, you're not going to believe how Douay-Rheims translates this verse. And let the peace of Christ rejoice in your hearts. Isn't that beautiful? And then sometimes I'll take a look at the Good News translation, Catholic edition. Sometimes there's just a neat insight you get from the Good News. Sometimes it's more of an interpretation than it is a translation. And this is what happens here. Check this out. The peace that Christ gives is to guide you in the decisions you make. So that's very insightful, but probably really not a translation, more of an interpretation. Then it's also good to take a look at a lexicon. So to go to the original Greek, it's so easy to do that nowadays. You can just go to Bible Hub and they'll give you the translation. Irene Christo Brabeuto Cardiais. So the word rule, which is what we're working with, or reign, or rejoice, or whatever, is brabeuto, which means to act as umpire. It goes on, it says, to act as arbiter in the games. So it's a word that's, I guess, hard to translate. It's most commonly translated as rule, but reign would work too. Control, rejoice is kind of a surprising translation, but there's perhaps a deeper understanding of the expression from the Douay-Rheims original translation. So for me, I would probably learn by heart, may the peace of Christ reign in your heart. Viva Christore!